Happy Hardscrabble Day. My name is Larry Thetford, and to my left is Dick Hansen, and we're here to demonstrate how wooden apple crates were assembled. Now, in the 1930s and 40s and into the 50s, fruit that was grown in the U.S. was shipped to market in wooden crates. And a good example here is this one. This is called an orange crate. And this was our favorite. As kids, we would take these and make all kinds of things out of them. We'd make raids on to the back of the grocery store and cart these off by the dozen. Take them apart, make forts, multiple shelves. Once we even had some axles and some wheels, we made a wagon out of one, stored your toys in them, use them as a nightstand, put your comics here and your lamp there, and read Tarzan all night. Now, these crates were rather specific to the type of crop that was shipped. So here we have plums, apricots, grapes, pears, peaches, and strawberries. Even the quart and pint units were also wood. So with that, now let's go to the apple boxes that were utilized. And there were two types. This box is called a field crate. And this is heavy duty, thicker wood. And these were used at harvest time right out in the orchard. The pickers would fill them directly sitting on the ground. You can see they have cut-out handholds. Each picker was assigned a number, and then he had a little roll of tape with that number on it. So when he would fill this box, he would put that number, stick that number on there, because they were paid by the piece. In other words, he was paid by the number of apple boxes that he filled each day. At the end of the day, they would pick up the boxes, put them on a wagon, take them to the cooler and stack them up. So these boxes took a lot of abuse because they were reused year after year. Now the other box is for shipping apples. It's much lighter. It holds about 30 pounds of apples, whereas the field box holds about 40 pounds of apples. And these are just a one-time use, unless you're a 10-year-old. So now let's describe the materials that are used for the shipping box. The wood is pre-cut at the mills, two size. This is a side. It's a little more than just an eighth of an inch thick. Here we have the bottom. This is a little more than a quarter of an inch thick and slightly longer. And then you have the end boards. And these are thicker yet. These are about a half an inch thick. And they're put together with two nailers. Now, when the bottom and the tops are attached, they are nailed into these nailer boards because that would be transverse to the grain of the wood and would hold. if they were nailed directly into this board, it would be with the grain and the nails would not hold. These are also pre-made at the mill. So the grower's going to order, in his shook order, he's going to order so many ends, so many sides, and so many bottoms. And lastly then, there are slats that'll be attached. And Dick will explain, how they're attached and what they do in terms of the box. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dick, and I'll hand him the materials when he's ready for them.
All right, first to explain what we gotta do mechanically. This is it's the only kind of hatchet made for this. It has a serration on it. So when you're hitting a nail, pounding it down straight, you do it like that. When you're setting a nail, which I'll show you, it's got to coincide kind of with the angle in there. Just tick it like that so it'd stand the nail up, and then you'd hit it with one shot if you're still young enough and good enough. I'll take probably 3 or 4 today. So you'd start with, this is what they call a nail stripper. And what it does is it puts them nails into a nice neat row so that you can pick them up and have enough for a half a crate in your hand. And so when I talk about angles, that angle right there is the one that would set it, and then pow, right angle would knock it down. So you'd start out with a handful of nails, and you just throw them, and as the vibration of beating on that table, they'd get a continuous flow of nails, so you always had a handful of nails there. So that's kind of the situation there. Now, as far as starting it, you put the ends in your jig. Put the ends in your jig. Okay, you put the side on first. Now I'll kind of make a fool out of myself, probably hit myself on the thumb with it. And let's see. You'd set the nail like that. Now, 65 years ago, I would do this very fluidly. Now we'll try the... Time has not been kind to my skills. Then you give it a quarter of a roll. Then you'd put the slats across it, 3 of them. give it another quarter of a roll. Of course, in real life, these things just flipped over. So we're Well, anyway, it would go all the way there. So then, side. You put the other side on in the same way. Go back to the stripper, get a nice neat row of nails again. And this time it'll be like automatic. Now this special hatchet was that way for just that. After all that was done, tight. You made yourself 3 cents. 3 cents, and of course I was a little better at it back then. This was like 53 to maybe 55. And I could knock out 300 of these a day. I'm not sure I could knock out a dozen a day right now. But anyway, when all was said and done, when this went to the packing house, let's see the slats like that, they're not gonna hold apples. When this came through the packing house at the end of the belt, there was a piece of cardboard that was pre-cut that went in there, went right over those slats. And then they would fill the ladies in the packing house would fill it with apples to a comfortable level so that when they went to put the bottom on, it didn't compress, put too much pressure on the apples and compress and bruise them. So then at the packing house, they would nail the last piece on, and that would become the bottom. And this would be the top. And it would be cushioned by that cardboard, so as it bounced and was handled, they didn't bruise the apples. And they would go to the market from there. Anyway, and at the end of the day, if you did 300 of them, you made $9, and you probably had bloody thumbs and from missing the nails and all that. But anyway, it's a young guy's sport.
So at the time, you were about, what, 14 or 15 years old?
14, 15, and then the last year I did it was just when I was 15.
Right.
Yeah.
And you want to tell us the story how you were terminated from your job?
Oh, well, at the time, I would run home for lunch. I had a bicycle, run home for lunch. And I'm doing like 300 a day for 3 cents a piece. And this guy that bought the farm was only his first couple of years into farming. He was kind of up here to straighten the country out. I'd stop and grab an apple and eat an apple on the way home. Well, one day he came by and I'm picking up an apple, just stops his car and says, "What are you doing?" Says, "What are you doing with my apples?" And I looked at him, and I just set it down, got back on my bike and went home. So I got back after lunch and he says, "Well, how many crates you got today?" And I said, "Well, I got 150 right now." Comes back a couple minutes later with a check and he says, "I think you better go home and think about your attitude." And so it was quite a surprise to me because apples on the ground went for cider and they really weren't worth anything.
Right.
So he fixed me and I went home in kind of dejected form. Said, "Well, I got fired for taking an apple. Was that dishonest or was that just country?" And I kind of thought maybe it was just country. So about 2 weeks later, after I got my working papers and I went working in the Grand Union and I was wearing a white shirt and a bow tie, I got home, my mother says, "You got a phone call from this guy." I call him back, she says, "Rich, I wonder if you can come back and make us, we need a couple thousand more crates." So I think I kind of got the last laugh. He certainly straightened the country out because at the time, there were guys, mass producers that made them with pneumatic machines. But I know very well they weren't making them for 3 cents a piece. So I got the last laugh out of them anyway, but I did get fired.
Yeah, one thing nice about the stripper is that they actually come apart.
Yeah.
And this becomes like a suitcase, so guys can travel around, I guess, from farm to farm, making these boxes. I found a third one, believe it or not.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. Oh, so I know now how they actually lay in the box, because we were having trouble making that one fit. So anyway.
I never expected you never find those.
I've never seen one in an antique shop or a flea market or anything, and all of a sudden we got 3.
Well, these, when you get with these, it's kind of just leave it dry, and the nails would come out of a keg, and they'd have that varnish finish on them. These are a little rusty, and they stick a little bit. But right out of the keg, you'd have a keg. That's a keg right there, about that size.
Yeah,
nail keg. They were varnished, and they slid right down there. So you would, if you put too many, it would jam them. But if you would keep a good handful in there, maybe a good handful, and every couple times, let's throw them up there, you'd get a perfect 3 rows of nails right in a row all the time.
Wow. Now, when you were making these shipping crates, did you have any help whatsoever?
No.
You had to grab the various pieces each time, right?
Well, on one end of the barn would be full of supplies, like you said, they would come in bales, and with this, you would take this and give the wire twist. They'd be wired in a bundle. You give this a twist, one twist, and it'd break them. And so I would stack on one side of me all bales that were open, so I could work for a couple hours off the ones I had open, and then on this side, I would pile them as high as I could pile them, until I got, at the end of the day, I would have myself boxed in with boxes.
So you were doing this inside a barn?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. And I would say, and you would invert them, you would put them in bundles of 3.
Yeah.
This is the way you'd stack them around the barn.
Right.
Of course, this isn't the one you're doing. You'd stack them around the barn, you just take them, set them over in the corner, and you just keep stacking them.
Mm-hmm.
So you'd fill the barn up, but no, it was a solitary thing, unless, I guess a couple times. Once in a while, somebody else would be working on the other end of the bench, but for the most part, it was a solitary operation.
Right. Any of you have any questions?
Good job.
Okay, well, hope you enjoyed the video, learned something, And a couple old timers here who can still remember what they were doing.
I know what arthritis of the thumb is now and how it affects making apple crates.